Okay, Mike. So two topics this week, and I think the first one we should start with is E3 2017 opening itself up to the public. It's going to sell 15,000 tickets, public tickets for people who aren't in the industry, and they are going to be able to come to the show, go on the show floor, stand in line, and then stand in line, and then stand in line, and then watch a video. What do you think? Is this a good thing?
I mean, I guess it depends on who you are. The whole E3 thing's interesting with so many kind of industry people and journalists. People kind of get jaded from it real quick. My whole thing when I was a kid, I loved E3.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was the greatest thing. I never actually went to it. It's just like that whole week for me. Like watching the press conference. I mean, God, I remember streaming those things on like GamesBot's like native weird video thing. It was just awful quality. And that's how I saw like the first trailer for Twilight Princess and stuff like that. I just like couldn't get enough of it. It was just that whole week I would go into school every day and like tell people like this is what's happening at E3. I was just really obnoxious about it. So it was like my dream to be able to to go to that, right? And I that's why I do like this, because I think there are a lot of people who that they dream of going to E3 someday, and it's kind of a hard thing for them to do, unless you find some weird roundabout way of getting in, or
which plenty of people do, but yeah,
which plenty of people do, but not everybody,
right? And I never did.
And that's part of the argument. So many people are doing that anyways. Like, why not just say, hey, sure, fine, it's open. If you want to spend money on a ticket, come on in. So I think it's fine in that way. I think it's good that some people can go to E3 that haven't. There's also the argument that for us, like me and you, we have appointments, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing. We're not necessarily standing in many lines these days.
Right.
So it doesn't, there's going to be some inconvenience of maybe being a little more crowded, but I don't know if it's going to have a giant impact on our work.
Yeah. So, So I'm with you. I felt the same way about E3. I would have died to have gone like throughout my entire life, and then when I finally got to go, it was still a very big deal for me. I was still very excited. It wasn't like, oh, now I've been in the industry for a couple of years, and I have this dispassionate feeling about going to E3. It was like, oh no, I'm going to E3. Now I get to say I've been to E3. And I think if there's people out there that want to be able to say that, especially with its future, I think even with this happening, kind of up in the air, and potentially, E3 might not be there for very much longer, because the purpose it used to serve, which was the ability to connect publishers with retail, outlets, that's not as important anymore. It's just that games aren't sold the same way they were forever ago. So that purpose doesn't really make sense that much anymore. So it has to shift. It has to change into something different. And if this doesn't succeed, it could go away. So if you want to be someone who said, I went to E3 at some point in my life, I think this is great for you.
Well, and isn't this kind of why they're doing this? Could this maybe save E3 in a way?
Yes,
totally. If you turn it into a revenue stream somehow with this. I mean, sure, E3 is going to change, but E3's always been changing, right? I mean, E3 right now is not what it was 5 years ago or 5 years before that.
Yeah, and I think, the real reason they're doing this is Activision and EA pulled out. I think some other companies pulled out of E3, but those are like the big ones. Those are huge companies that left gaping holes on the show floor, and they pay a lot of money to be a part of this thing. So the reason that they're bringing in the people, it's not just because the ticket sales are going to make that much money for them. It's really to keep the companies that are still subscribing to this thing every year, to keep their money coming in, so that they have a reason to actually come to E3 and have this physical presence at this show. I do think it could save it. I think that is probably their only route that they could possibly go. Now, that said, I don't know if E3 2017 is going to be a very good experience for anybody because of this. I think there's going to be some serious growing pains this year, and it's going to still be a lot like E3 2016, where it's a lot of lines to watch videos of games that are going to be coming out, and then maybe a couple lines to play some multiplayer games. And people, and I guess they're going to have panels and stuff like that, but I don't know. It's not going to be like San Diego Comic-Con, I don't think, which I think it needs to turn into if it's really going to establish itself as this huge fan convention.
I always like E3 because it's not panel-focused. And, maybe you're not going to do a lot. Maybe you are going to stand in line. But even just walking around the show floor, just looking at, like, I'm still somebody who like the spectacle of it is still always really cool to me. Just seeing the booths and seeing the people walking around and like, oh look, there's that game. And that is kind of the thing. There is going to definitely to be some adjustment with show floor. It'd be nice if people had a lot more like demo kiosks out so people can play the games.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree there has been a lot of like the mini theater set up at E3s for a while now. It's like go inside and watch this video. It's like
this video is gonna be online in like a week, so I should have just
and like a lot of times like I remember the coolest one I ever saw was that BioShock Infinite one, and it was really sweet. And then like that was that infamous one where BioShock Infinite was not really like that at all. Yeah. So it's like, what are you really watching? So yeah, sure. There's a little bit of that, but even still, people, I mean, like even if you go to PAX, and I know you've been saying like, oh, just go to PAX.
I just think this year, if you have the money for one or the other, go to PAX. I would say, and then let them iron out these kinks, and let them say, oh, and next year we're gonna have all these other things that we realized we should have had this year and didn't, and go in 2018 instead. That would be my advice. But
even PAX always has its like show floor, which is like a little mini E3, and
yes,
they'll still have like the big booth that's a movie theater to go in and watch a game, and people will line up for hours to do it. So people like want to do that.
Yeah, totally. And I think especially if there's a game that you're like insanely excited about, like if Zelda Breath of the Wild last year was like your thing, and you waited all day in that line and got in and got to play it and got to be in that booth experience, cool. I think that would have been worth it, and you would have had a good time at E3. But if you're not really sure what you're excited about, and you go there and you wait in a couple lines and you play 2 games in a day or see 2 games in a video and then you leave, I feel like you could feel kind of burned. And that's where I'm just like, I want to hesitate, so just put the brakes on people a little bit, say, think about this. And if you only have the money for one or the other, maybe PAX would be better just because there's so many other options for entertainment.
See, and to get your money's worth. I believe you, but like if I had never done either of them and I was like, what am I going to go to? I'd go to E3.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I would have done the same thing. And that's why I'm saying these things, because I think I would have felt the same way. Especially, in the heyday and back a long time ago when I was really crazy about how amazing E3 was because I was so far away from it and there was no work attached to it. I would have done the same thing. I don't know. But so do you think that E3 will look more and more like PAX with more panels and more stuff like that?
I don't know.
Or like San Diego Comic-Con, or do you think it can maintain its identity?
I still want it to mostly be a show floor show. Mm-hmm. Right, where it's kind of about walking around, seeing booths,
real quick though,
games out.
When you thought of E3 before you went to E3, were you thinking the show floor or were you thinking of the press conferences?
I mean it was both, but I knew that when I was going it was going to be a show floor. That's what I was. I mean the press conferences that's something where the play at home version is just as good almost. Mm-hmm. Especially now that I've been to some of the press conferences, I'm kind of like, yeah, I could just watch the stream of that. That's okay. It's fine. It's cool to be there, but whatever. The show floor is like the real. You got to be there and see some ridiculous thing like last year with Breath of the Wild. Like, wow, this booth is so cool, and not many people are ever going to get to see it. It's almost a shame. Mm-hmm. I remember just again the Twilight Princess booth, just reading about that. I'm like, God, I wish I could. It's almost kind of like making a little video game theme park for a few days, and that's what I kind of like E3 as, right? With the spectacle and all that stuff and the theming, even that's what I think E3 is kind of good at, and I kind of understand why you should maybe make that public, because again, it's it is like an amusement park.
You get your money's worth. They're spending all this money to not just have that show floor space, which costs a lot of money. To rent that from the ESA, and then all the money on top of that to build all these plastic models and pay the people to put them up, the union fees and whatever. That's expensive.
And it makes sense still from the purpose of trying to generate buzz about these games, because we live in this influencer age where everybody's an influencer, right? So everybody who goes in there is somebody who can make a YouTube video or post on Facebook or Twitter, or whatever.
Yeah, so. I think when we say, is it a good thing? I think it is definitely the right thing for E3 itself and the ESA and for the future of this thing. It needs to open up and bring these people in. You're right, to keep that cachet, because you're right, we're an influencer sort of economy now, and you got to have those people, and you got to make it real easy for them to get in, and you got to, because that incentivizes those people, the other companies, to keep paying the money. Now, whether it's a good thing, I think for the people attending this year or for us, trying to cover it. I don't think it's going to cause us too many headaches. Like you said, we have appointments. Maybe some of the pathways will be a little bit more crowded, but
sure, they're already pretty crowded. It's hard to imagine them being more crowded.
Right. And, like with EA and Activision pulling out, there is a bunch of space on the periphery. And if ESA is smart and, like, creates, enough distractions on the outside here, uses that space wisely, it might not feel that much more dense.
The thing that might be hard for us is, like, we could still maybe go to, like, the Sony booth or the Microsoft booth and, like, wait in some of those lines to see games. That might be harder. Who knows?
Right.
We'll see.
I think we're just going to have to, and, like, this is just the reality of it, to do our jobs. We're going to have to rely more on our PR contacts to be like, hey, can we please just set up a time to come see this game that we didn't really know about until after your press conference? I have a little bit of time right then. Can I please get in?
That's kind of the thing. Is I'm gonna feel even worse skipping lines now.
I know, but
like paying money and like
too bad. Like it's still a trade show first, really. I mean, that's
to go work there,
right? So, and I got to do my job. So yeah, I'm sorry. Like at PAX, I don't do that. I don't really cut the lines ever. If a developer's like, hey, we really want to come see. We really want you to come see the game. Come on. I would feel really weird about cutting a line at PAX because it's a fan-focused event. At E3, I'm just going we don't have any time. I got to get in there. There's no way I'm waiting in any line, and we got to get hands-on with this game. At least get an idea of what it's like. So
I haven't been to a PAX in forever, actually.
Yeah, actually, I haven't either. We should go to one. We should make GamesBeat let us go to one. We should do a panel. It's another discussion. We should we'll come up with a panel idea.
We could do that. We're professionals.
We are. I've been called a professional before. My mom
Decides live.
My mom calls me a professional.
My mom does not. My mom has no idea what I do. That's the thing. She has an idea that video games are involved, like Mario, but sometimes I make her do my job for me. She still doesn't quite understand.
I think sometimes my mom watches these, so you could say hi, Miss G.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Grubb.
Yeah, there you go.
Your son's a doofus.
I am.
I'm sorry for you.
I'm a doofus. It's her fault.
No, we know.
All right, Mike. I think that's going to wrap up our E3 talk. I guess any other thoughts on that before we move on?
Not really. It's just so many people. There are a lot of people who just don't like E3, and this is just no reason for them to not like it. And I understand that it is hard work when you're there working it. It seems like every year it's like this weird thing where like as you kind of get the learning curve behind it, it's like you're better at it, but that just makes it become more work as you're more efficient in a way.
Yeah, you do a lot. Yes.
Right, and so but and even when I'm having this much, I still remind myself of that kind of little kid like who would have getting anything to beat E3, and I'm able to kind of like find the joy and wonder of being there again. So yeah. It's not gonna bother me if people want to go to E3.
Yeah,
I hope they have fun.
Yeah, I'm never gonna wait in another line again. After we did that one year, we waited in line to play Evolved.
We thought Evolved was so important that it was worth it.
And we waited in a line for a really long time. And we were professionals. We could have maybe gotten an appointment had we tried. I knew the PR guy that was running the thing. I should have just asked him. But we waited in line. And it was a really long time. And I think your team beat my team. I think you were on the other team.
Of course, I destroyed.
Right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, this just sucked. This is such a waste of time. And I felt real bad afterwards because I'm complaining that I was at E3 playing a game that everyone was dying to play, and how dare I? But it still sucked because it was such a waste of time, and I could have got so much other work done. So it's like this real dichotomy. But I don't think that this change is going to be any worse than that was. I'm not going to have my job's not going to be that much harder. My life is not going to be suddenly so difficult because E3 has a bunch of people from the outside, and that's not going to happen. I'm going to be fine. And I bet a lot of those people are going to have a really good time, and they'll give us kind of a fresh perspective on the show floor.
It'd be fun to have some kind of extra enthusiasm.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see what the buzz is like on Twitter and like instead of just people watching videos and things like that. They get that kind of secondhand information. There's going to be a lot more people trying games. Maybe we'll learn about some games that we wouldn't have heard about otherwise.
Yeah, besides, these influencers are all taking our jobs anyways. We got to be nice to them.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all going to be working for them. I mean, they're not going to pay us anything, exactly. But whatever.
Yeah.